What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. In episode Heresy, Bungie will be introducing a lot of improvements with Arc Subclasses and Arc abilities. Titans and Warlocks will see new Arc aspects. Several current Hunter aspects will be getting updated. There will be a handful of changes coming to current Arc and Prismatic fragments. Several Arc subclass abilities will be getting buffed through a new sandbox rebalance, and there will even be a new Arc Verbage called Bolt Charge that will add a great deal of bonus damage as you're using Arc weapons and Arc abilities. With this in mind, I thought it would be a good idea to take an early look at some top-tier Arc builds that will benefit greatly from these new changes, and should prove to be very formidable options to build upon throughout this new episode. We'll be highlighting a few builds with each of the three classes, and if you need help putting together any of the builds that we talk about today, then be sure to check out the Mobalytics and the Destiny Item Manager links that will be included below. Let's first talk about Bolt Charges. This is the new Arc Verbage, and the best way to think about this is to compare it to how Scourge and Ignitions work with Solar. When you have an aspect or fragment that builds up Bolt Charges, you'll gain a 10% bump in melee energy each time a new stack charges, and there will be a total of 10 stacks. Once all of the charges have been built up, you'll create a giant bolt of lightning energy that will strike down on any nearby enemy, and that's going to trigger whenever you activate your next Arc ability. The damage created from these lightning bolts will be equivalent to that of Ignitions, but Bungie promises that it will perform much more consistently. This means you could time out the use of certain abilities like your grenade or super to optimize your damage against any single target or big groups of enemies. So you can expect to see a big rise in the performance of several Arc-oriented exotics, both in terms of armor, but in weaponry as well, because Bolt Charges should work cohesively with Arc abilities that are triggered by weapons, such as Blind, Jolt, and Chain Reaction, and I'm sure that we'll see several artifact mods that will directly enhance these even further. To have easier access to Bolt Charges, Bungie will be augmenting several fragments, including Spark of Discharge, Momentum, Frequency, Volts, and Ions. Spark of Discharge is a big standout here, as you'll gain stacks of Bolt Charges whenever collecting Ionic traces. And on the flip side, Spark of Ions will be another interesting fragment, as defeating enemies with Bolt Charges will create Ionic traces. So with these two fragments together, you'd create a lot of harmony between the creation of Ionic traces and Bolt Charges. Bolt Charges will be made available to the Prismatic subclass, so we're going to get a couple of changes to a few fragments to help facilitate this. Facet of Hope, Sacrifice, and Purpose will all be getting adjusted, and I'm really excited about Facet of Purpose, because you're now going to gain stacks of Bolt Charges as you collect orbs, instead of triggering Amplified. As we mentioned earlier, there's going to be a number of changes coming to Arc abilities that will impact each of the three classes. So let's go ahead and take a deeper look into each class and identify what the best builds for each will be. Warlocks will be getting the new Ionic Sentry aspect, and the best way to look at this is to compare it to how Gunpowder Gamble works for Hunters. As you defeat enemies with Arc abilities and Arc weapons, you'll build up charges of Ionic Sentry, and once it's fully charged, you'll gain a secondary grenade ability, and this will take priority over top of your current pre-selected grenade. Whenever Ionic Sentry is ready, you'll throw out this ball of Arc energy by pressing your grenade button. This will act as a stationary turret, and it will blind nearby enemies on impact. This will continuously send out bolts of lightning that will chain through enemies, and as enemies are defeated, you'll gain additional stacks of Bolt Charges. These sentries should make crowd control scenarios much easier to manage, and since the blind will stun unstoppable champions, it can be a great tool for in-game content. Stormcallers will see an increase to the overall damage of all three super types, with Storm Trance getting buffed by 20% against any non-champion enemy, and Lightning Surge getting increased by 30%, with Chaos Reach getting buffed by 15%. This could easily open up the way for the Geomag Stabilizers to really dish out some high levels of damage, but it's the Getaway Artist exotic gauntlets that I think will be a better exotic to build around. This allows us to consume our grenade energy, and by doing so we will become amplified, which is going to give us a 15% bonus in damage resistance. And as we consume our grenade, we will create an Arc Buddy. This would allow us to have Electrostatic Mind and Ionic Sentry active at the same time, which would turn us into a fountain of Ionic traces and Bolt Charges. Creating Ionic traces will be key towards the uptime of our abilities, since each Ionic trace will provide us with 15% class ability energy and just over 12% melee and grenade energy. Adding on Spark of Ions will be a great option for this build, to be able to maximize on our creation of Ionic traces and bolt charges, which is going to let us cast more Ionic Sentries and more Arc Buddies. And we can improve the uptime of our super and maintain weapon surges more easily by adding in Spark of Amplitude, which would see us creating orbs of power as we defeat enemies while amplified. With Amplified providing us with a 15% bonus in damage resistance, we could increase our overall resistance by adding on Spark of Resistance, which would give us another 15% bump in damage resistance whenever we are surrounded. The Getaway artist will pair up with a lot of great exotics like the Thunderlord, the Legend of Ocarius, and Centrifuge, but don't sleep on options like the Necrochasm, since the Cursed Thrall explosions count as arc damage, and the Exdaris, which will create loyal Seeker Moths, which are going to trigger blind on impact. Aside from the standout performance that you can expect to see out of the Getaway artist, I would keep a watchful eye on the performance of the Crown of Tempest. This exotic provides increased ability energy whenever collecting Ionic traces, and you'll be able to take advantage of the increased super damage since consecutive final blows with Storm Treants will extend its duration, and by using the Arc Souls aspect we'd still be able to have our Arc Buddy. When it comes to Titans, there's a lot of things to be excited about. Barricades are getting buffed, and so is Juggernaut and Ballistic Slam, plus there's a new aspect called Storm's Keep. Barricades will now provide 80% splash damage resistance for you and any teammate standing behind a barricade, and the taunt created by barricades will be more effective for a much longer duration. Juggernaut shields will now provide 60% splash damage resistance and 10% overall damage resistance, and as the Juggernaut shield takes damage, stacks of bolt charges will be built. With Amplified already providing a 15% bonus in damage resistance, Titans are going to be tankier than ever when using Juggernaut. Ballistic Slam will gain a stacking bonus in damage of as much as 30%, but this will be based on the overall distance traveled, so the longer that you travel, the more damage you're going to deal. Titan's new Storm Keep aspect plays off of the use of our class ability, and it will work with any barricade option and with thrusters, but you'll find a much more benefit whenever using it with rally barricades. When casting your class ability, you'll generate stacks of bolt charges to both you and nearby allies. And as you and allies deal damage from behind your barricade, you will continue to build up bolt charges, and any weapon, even non-arc weapons, will be able to trigger bolt charges once they've reached maximum stacks. With multiple team members having the ability to trigger these bolt charges, we could be in store for a big rise in overall damage numbers during any raid and dungeon boss encounter. With the new Storm's Keep aspect in mind, I think the Actium War Rigs will be one of the most beneficial exotics for Titans to build around, and if we see any champion mods getting dedicated towards auto rifles or heavy machine guns, then this could become an even stronger option. This will continuously reload any equipped auto rifle or heavy machine gun, so by pairing this with auto rifles like the VS Pyroelectric Propellant, the Centrifuge, Grand Overture, or Thunderlord, we could capitalize on the sustained damage, and would have a continuous source of jolt getting applied to our enemies. Spark of Brilliance would make a great addition to an Actium War Rigs build, as this would trigger blinding explosions from precision final blows, greatly improving our crowd control capabilities. With Knockout providing us with a reliable source of health regeneration and bonus melee damage, we could utilize the benefits of Ballistic Slam and Juggernaut with a more aggressive build that's oriented towards the use of the Eternal Warrior. This exotic provides a stacking bonus in weapon damage as you defeat consecutive enemies with any of your arc abilities, and as you cast your Fist of Havoc, you'll gain a 70-point overshield, and when your super is over with, you'll gain a 30% bonus in weapon damage, and that's going to last for 11 seconds. So as long as we're able to maintain a high level of uptime to our abilities, we'll be able to maintain those damage bonuses for a good bit of time. And since we'll be able to create plenty of Ionic traces by using Spark of Ions, we'll have plenty of energy getting split between all three abilities. Between the resistance bonuses that we'll gain from Amplified, Spark of Resistance, and Juggernaut, we'll be able to endure a lot of incoming damage, which will be perfect for an aggressive striker build. When it comes to Hunters, we don't get any new aspects, but we do get some modifications to some existing ones. Tempest Strike gains a new effect, and it's now going to grant stacks of bolt charges as you defeat jolted targets, and Tempest Strike itself will deal 57% increased damage. Disorienting Blow will now build up stacks of bolt charges, and disorienting blows themselves will now create a considerable amount of area damage to any enemy that's within 9 meters. Ascension will now grant a total of 3 Arc Fragments, which will really open up some options for Arcstrider hunters. The Star Eater scale brings a lot of standout benefits to Arcstriders, as it grants as much as a 70% bonus in super damage, but with it only providing benefits to our super, I think the builds that revolve around the Gifted Conviction will be a much better option. Activating Ascension or Tempest Strike will cast out projectiles, which deal a decent amount of impact damage, and they trigger Jolt on impact. When applying Jolt to targets who are within 15 meters, you will gain a stacking bonus in damage resistance, which starts at 25% but maxes out at 50%. When adding in the bonus resistance provided by Amplified and Spark of Resistance, you're looking at a nearly indestructible Arcstrider build that's action-packed with powerful crowd clearing abilities. Even with Gifted Conviction providing us with a great source of jolt and damage resistance, you're likely to find a lot of success with more aggressive Arcstrider builds, like Liar's Handshake and Assassin's Cowl. These are renownedly known for being powerful exotics for up-close combat, and should prove to be very strong options with these upcoming changes, so they're definitely exotics that you want to keep an eye out for. And with that, we've now covered some of the best and most powerful Arc builds that you'll be able to rely on in Heresy. And once we have details on our new Heresy artifact mods, we'll get that information out to you, and we'll keep those build links updated in the process. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the changes coming up with Heresy, and what Arc builds you're most excited for using. Let us know down in the comments. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.